Um, it's so weird because I'm looking at it's
Yeah, it's
yeah,
yeah,
there you
it's
are.
never going to work out right.
Yeah, exactly. And you grew up in
I grew up in
Washington?
Kent, Washington, so I grew up about 2 hours and 45 minutes directly north of here on I-5.
Okay.
So I'm a Pacific Northwest kid. I've lived here from when I was 2 until I was 23. So
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, you spent some time in Arizona, right?
9 years in Arizona, 2003 until 2012. I went down there for grad school and didn't finish grad school. Well, dropped out, I guess would be a better way of saying it. And then kind of stuck around and yeah, never really had a plan. Just kind of stuck and found new jobs. And then the recession hit, so no one could leave. And
Hmm.
so yeah, just kind of did whatever I could to survive.
So let me walk you through what I'm trying to do with this project, and then we can figure out what direction to go with this discussion. So I'm a I too am a PR guy. At least that's what I'm thinking that you are.
Sometimes.
Sometimes PR, writing,
Yeah.
communications, those sorts of
Whatever.
fun things.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, and I have more I have more blogs than I care to admit, and most of them do not monetize, but they just keep writing stuff, and it keeps being somewhat interesting to me. And the latest project that I've been working on, and this is the first time I've really actually gone into a writing project with a plan.
Mhm.
So it could be saying something. I wrote a book 6, 7 years ago that was a social media guide for real estate people. It was the closest thing I ever came to writing a book with a plan.
Okay.
And the idea there was establish myself as some sort of expert in how real estate people do the social media thing.
Yeah.
The wonderful fun with that was that then the recession hit, nobody cares, and also real estate agents are all idiots. So
I work with a lot of them in Arizona. Yes.
yeah, and I realized I wasn't gonna, nobody was gonna buy anything from me. So um, that and social media advice was everywhere. So I decided to focus my writing projects away from social media things and more towards endeavors that could possibly lead to other fun things. I have where I'm headed with this is I kind of consider myself a dime store economist,
Okay.
and I see the direction that the economy is heading being really not great,
Yeah.
and that there's going to be more of a focus on people having to string together multiple
Jobs.
streams, yeah, multiple jobs,
Yeah.
multiple streams of income. It's not just going to work and working for the man for 30 some odd years and then getting a gold watch and retiring, although that does happen our generation, um, my generation, and then the generation behind me. I'll be 45 tomorrow, and the generation, it's happening less and less for people like me and people in their 30s. It's a totally foreign concept.
Yeah. So you're solid Gen X. I'm in that in between Gen X, Gen Y, 1979 middle crowd. So yeah.
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 Yeah, it's weird because I have a good friend I worked with several years ago who was born in 1979. We used to kind of wonder, hey, wait a minute, we're sort of kind of in the same generation, but there's no way.
Yeah. I have a friend who's 40, had just turned 48.
Okay.
Same
Yeah.
thing. And we get along really well. Like we have very similar taste in music and movies and all that type of stuff. But yeah, our experiences are just different. Like I was too young to understand what Reality Bites was about, but I knew that it was a good movie.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like Nirvana, it was all up in Seattle. I was 12, 13. I couldn't go to, I
Yeah.
wasn't going to go to, I wasn't going to go see Kurt Cobain in some seedy place when I was 12 or 13. Not, doesn't happen.
Got it. So anyways, where I'm headed with this is the working title is Financial Survivalist.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do is piece together some stories from a bunch of different generations and different lifestyles, so to speak,
Yeah.
and figure out kind of. Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to be the poor man's Dave Ramsey, but I realize that a lot of his messaging is it's going to alienate some people because it's highly religious.
Yeah.
It's also going to alienate some people because it's unrealistic. And to put this in perspective, I've got I consider her a good friend, former colleague. She just left the place I'm still working at. And one of the reasons, I mean, she left for two reasons. And so she's one of the people that I'm sort of kind of featuring in the book. She's 24. She's insanely bright, and I mean, she's got a good future in public relations. She's a really solid writer, et cetera, et cetera. She realized that she's being underpaid to the tune of about 20% or so, and she has student loans out the yin yang. So there's no way for her to even fathom sticking around for whatever it was, 50K a year, when she could get a 42% raise, which is what she just got to go move elsewhere. And while at the same time she's focusing on side gigs and what's my next thing, and how can I better myself, and then how do I chip away at this bullshit student loan stuff and all of that. So, and I think that's the direction I'm heading with the book. It's one thing for Dave Ramsey to get up there and say, well, you shouldn't have paid all that money for that degree that you're not using.
Yeah, that's not really helping anymore.
It's not helping. The messages from the Mike Rowe of the world are resonating well, I think. But if the horse is left, that's the go get yourself a community college 2-year degree or learn how to weld or something like that. And don't chase your passion, get a job and chase your passion outside of the job. And I see that. But if the horse has left the stable, then let's focus on real world advice for the people who do have to chip away at this.
Yeah.
At this bullshit. So that's what I'm looking to get at. And
cool.
I'll ask you some questions, and if it's too much info, then just tell me,
cool.
Go pound sand.
No problem.
But and you also are the kind of demographic that I think might look good in this book, because you're married, correct?
I am married.
You've been married for a few years?
Yep, been married for almost 4 years.
Okay, cool. And you guys, you made a little news with an article about
yeah.
What I thought was interesting about that, and so maybe question one will be, you were, I mean, are you the gentrifiers? I mean, it looked like you guys were being painted into a corner as the evil young gentrifiers who were trying to make ends meet, and you're probably just like everybody else, but they made you seem like you're you're evil for trying to make a living, and you're evil for not doing the Fred Armisen type view of Portland type thing.
Which is funny, because Portlandia made all its money by exploiting Portland, which is what we didn't do.
Right.
Not that I have any problem with Portlandia or Fred Armisen. Like, it's a TV show. Awesome.
Yeah.
Painted as gentrifiers, they needed a face. People were upset. I mean, the city's changing. Portland was basically the last popular West Coast city to grow up. So after San Francisco and then Seattle, Portland was the obvious kind of next kind of quirky, weird place to have to go through a bunch of changes. The recession hit Portland really hard, and people started to realize that, hey, there's this place up on the West Coast that has really good weather most of the time, meaning it's not super hot, it's not super cold. I'm not saying the weather's awesome. It's raining right now for 30 days in a row or something. But Yeah, so we came up here, and I think a lot of other people did too. And we were painted. The reaction was, well, you guys are different than what we're used to, or you just have more money. And I think that was the biggest thing, is we were painted as gentrifiers, even though we weren't, because the gentrification had actually already happened years ago in Portland, when all the and this is, you can look us up, when all the white people bulldozed all the minority neighborhoods and built stuff. So we essentially gentrified the gentrifiers, which makes me not feel that bad for them. But it's a matter of a changing city that is rapidly starting to look different every single day, because it was so behind on fitting new people in here. And I opened my mouth, as I have kind of a want to do, because I was a little mad that we were being painted as this terrible people because of some really bad marketing video that they made. Yeah, so that's been an interesting experience, and I haven't really recovered from it, and it has made the Portland that I thought was fun and whimsical and artistic and creative and amazing into a bunch of almost like scared villagers who are just experiencing the real world for the first time. And it was disappointing to see that, because from my time growing up here, my great grandparents lived in Mill City, Oregon, just south of here. So I was in Portland a lot as a kid, and it was really disappointing to see that type of mentality. People are scared, and they have no solution. So they're just lashing out at anyone who speaks up. And I happen to be really good at speaking up, so they came after me.
And so what is the backlash, or how have you guys been recovering from the backlash?
Well, I didn't take it well. That and other other arguments in dealing with the Portland community. Like cyclists was another thing that happened a couple months later. I've been miserable, feeling like an outsider in your own city, feeling guilty because you're ruining something that you loved. Mm-hmm. I haven't gone out to any bars. Like, I haven't met anyone new. My wife has dealt with it by working very hard at her job and being good at it, and she keeps getting promoted and raises and bonuses and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very happy that she's been able to use it to help us, for sure. I'd help her, but help us. Every day since then has been a little bit better, but it was really bad for a long time. It was strange to be painted as the villain in a story that you didn't realize you were even a character in. So I haven't really recovered at all. I'm still pretty sad about it, to be honest, to be completely honest with you.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you went through all that, and I'm sorry that it seems just, and I mean, I was following on the periphery, but it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of seems anti-Portland.
There's a lot of things about Portland that would surprise you.
Yeah.
It was very what I considered anti-Portland. We just weren't the right kind of weird, I guess, or I think a lot of it was people who don't understand anything better think that anyone who makes more money than them is a trust fund kid or is rich or whatever else, because they grew up in some super poor Eastern Oregon, or sorry, not necessarily Eastern, rural area where they were able to grow their own food, so they didn't have to worry about money as much. And it's just, and I think a lot of people from all over state have flocked to Portland, and no one quite can agree on what a city should be. And so people from other places are coming and saying, well, cities are this, and Portlanders are saying, well, no, we live in a small city. I'm like, no, you don't. Sorry. A lot less accepting than you think it was, but you realize that Oregon is an extremely red state with very, very concentrated, small geographically, but large population-wise, concentrations of liberals. You didn't really notice that, but I have found that the liberals are far less accepting of different behavior than conservatives in Portland, just in Portland, which is strange. Yeah.
What was the draw of Portland before you got there? Because one of the themes that I'm seeing is that it's impossible. This happened to me 20 years ago, where I grew up in small town Indiana,
Yep.
and the and then I went to college in upstate New York, and I got out, and I'm like, screw it, I got to get to a big city.
Yeah.
And so, what was it? Was it you had to get to Portland, or was it you had to get to a big city, and Portland was the one that made the most sense?
I would think that I wanted to get to a big city, and Portland made the most sense. If you look at Seattle, it's on the water, and so is San Francisco. It's on the seawater. It's the sound and it's whatever else. But the hills and all that make for not a great city living experience, especially for someone who likes to run and walk and bike everywhere. Hills are great for you, but when you have to do that every day, it just gets old fast. But here in Portland, it's an hour to the coast. It's an hour, ish. It's an hour to the mountains. Like I said before, it doesn't get super hot. It doesn't get super cold. It's right on I-5, so I can go up to Canada or Seattle or Canada if I want to. And if I really get excited, I can go down to somewhere in California. But for me, it's ideally located right in the middle Pacific Northwest, and I think a lot of people think that way too. It's just it's not as cold as crowded in Seattle or San Francisco, and it's still a little bit of a sleepy town. You can get away with one car per household like we do, which you can't always get away with in some cities that are growing but not quite. They're still towns, not quite cities, and you can't really rely on public transportation or personal transportation as well. Personal meaning bike or walk. So,
right.
Yeah.
That sounds fair. I guess one of the questions that I would have is you make sacrifices when you get to a city.
Yep.
And what are some of the big ones? I guess I'm thinking more financially, that you and your wife have decided to make in order to keep your big city lifestyle.
It's a good one. We had to compromise on either quality of our apartment or size of it. There was no in between because we had a specific amount of money, which for us is $1,500 a month in order to spend on rent. So we either could get a bigger but crappier place that's way down south, or not way, but in a city a couple miles is a lot, especially when it crosses Powell, which is a state highway, which makes just crossing it is a large decision. It's hard to do that. Or we can live up more close to the city core in a nicer apartment, but much smaller. So we chose location over apartment size. So we live in 592 square feet with 2 people and a dog and an office. Like I have an office in here. That was a big one. We had to get rid of every motorized vehicle that we didn't use all the time, which meant, I'd sold my car before I moved here. We just had Katie's car, but I also had a scooter and a little moped that I was going to use around town. We had to get rid of that. So if we didn't use it, once a week or almost, or even once a day, it was gone. All of our, any extra car, even my bike, I'm considering getting rid of that because we don't have as much stuff. You also, for us, we sacrificed, for me, I sacrificed money for access to find stuff to do. There's a lot of stuff you can do in Portland for free or cheap, but you have to have time or the connections in order to be able to find out about that stuff. So I've sacrificed that a little bit in wanting to move here. And travel. We can't afford to travel much. We can't afford to fly anywhere. Thankfully, we have just about everything we need within a couple hours of where we are, but that's a big part of it. In Phoenix, we could go to LA and it was cheap to fly everywhere because it was Phoenix. Phoenix, you can fly everywhere. Not so much in Portland. It's expensive and there's always a layover somewhere. So we sacrifice definitely cars, definitely the ability to have a large apartment versus a small one versus location, and our ability to fly anywhere beyond our general area.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you guys stick to a budget?
Yes, we only live, and we've done this for a while. We only live off Katie's salary, and she has a 9-to-5 job. So we live off 80% of whatever her take-home stuff is, which keeps us well beneath our means for what we can afford and all that. So any money that I earn as a writer or any contracts or whatever else goes immediately towards savings or toward big ticket items or random expenditures and whatever else. Because we've figured out that while we're definitely not poor, we're almost month to month. We have some savings, but not much. If we can have bills that are reliably the same amount, that's easier to pay than trying to skimp by every month. A cell phone plan would be a good example of this. We pay a little bit extra for data per month because I never want an overage fee, because overage fees are what's going to kill us. And that's allowed us to not worry about having crazy random stuff to buy at times.
Do you feel that? Do you still have student loan debt?
Yes, tremendous amount.
Okay. Do you feel that? And to put this in perspective, I mean, when I got out, I think I had, and I'm not fishing for a number, but I think I had. And this, again, I got out of school 24 years ago. I had 15,000.
Yeah, that was my end state.
Yeah, in debt. So it took a while to chip away at that, but it impacted. I guess here's where I'm going with the question: has it impacted decisions about, I should take this job because?
It did. Before I got married, it absolutely did. Because we were I was so concerned about paying all my bills that I got a corporate job at Pearson a couple of years ago, right before the recession, right before all the layoffs. I was part of the last part of recession layoffs. Pearson College, they do college textbooks and stuff like that. Yeah. And yeah, it did because, Katie and I really function as a team when it comes to our stuff. So we knew that, one person had to worry about this stuff. Thankfully, she's much more motivated about that. So it works out. It doesn't work out for everyone. But yeah, when I was single, I much more had to worry about that. I always had to have a job. I'd have a job doing a certain thing and doing a certain amount and whatever else. Thankfully, what really helped me out is in 2005 or something, I locked in my interest rate for all my loans. So it's like 2.5%. Which is lower than my financial advisor that we have says that's lower than the rate of inflation most years. So you're actually better off never paying those. Not that I'm not going to pay them, but that gives me some leeway in order for what bills you have to actually, really worry about. But our debt is, it was close. If it wasn't six figures, combined, it was close. It doesn't matter who's now. We're married, so we both owe. Right. But yeah, so it was six figures, and that was for 2 undergraduates and 1.5 grad degrees, which is a lot. And we both worked, the whole time during school, and couldn't afford to pay our tuition like my dad did when he was in school. So. Yeah,
and that's one of the we've got 3 kids, and the oldest is a high school freshman.
Yeah.
And I keep telling my wife, my wife is a product of a state school, and her parents, her dad paid for that. And I went to a school because, I had to be a network sportscaster, and come hell or high water, that was going to happen. Well, lo and behold, I'm not convinced. I had a great college experience, but I'm not convinced that it was worth it.
Oh, I would say my community college is worth it for sure. 100% that I would go again today. But university, unless you're totally willing to jump into a corporate job system, there's no reason to do it. And most people aren't going to get there. Yeah, I agree. Not worth it for the money. I'm not saying it wasn't worth it, but it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, I keep suggesting that we should downgrade expectations from wherever they were, even my wife went to Illinois State, which is, that's not a top tier, even among the state schools. It's not a top tier, it's not a Big Ten school or whatever. I'm downgrading expectations to what I like to call the directionals: northern, eastern, western, and southern Illinois. You can probably get a pretty fine education.
Fine.
Tuition at Southern Illinois, which is considered, I think, it's a party school, and they've tried to ratchet up their stature, and they've done an okay job of it. But the funny thing is that tuition's 6,000 or 7,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's nothing compared to what you could get talked into doing at other places.
Yeah.
And I think the calculus is going to start to change, especially when you get out. And I mean, I don't know how often you get asked where you went to school.
Never. I've never even asked if I have a college degree. I mean, in my field of work right now, it wouldn't even matter. I mean, yeah, I can see college degrees being useful for specific trade degrees. I mean, my roommate in college is a mechanical engineer, I think. And he went specific classes, and he's had 2 jobs since he graduated. We graduated at the same time because that's what he wanted to do. My brother-in-law did the same thing. Went to Seattle University, went to school, at night for 4 years, and now works for Kenworth doing mechanical engineering stuff. So if you have a specific trade skill, awesome. Like engineering, which requires that you have a base of set of knowledge and a base of compliance type stuff and all that. But everything that's not an engineer, do you need to learn? I mean, I don't think college is going to help you a whole lot.
Yeah. What about big ticket future items? Because I think one of the questions that pops into people's heads about anybody younger than 40 is, do you have plans on buying, or are you buying a house, or are you so jaded by watching people's experiences that it's like, no, screw this?
We are not going to be buying a house ever unless some fantastic, amazing thing happens. But what I have seen from everyone that I've seen buy a house, successful or not, is it either sucks up all of your money or it sucks up all of your time. And I've watched my dad and my mom build things and rebuild things and replace things and renovate things. My dad just renovated my parents' kitchen. Did a great job. But it took so much of his, I mean, that was basically he went to work and his hobby was fixing up the house, keeping the house right. And I just never wanted to have that responsibility. It's not that I do not begrudge it. I just didn't want to have that level of, well, now you have this house. Now you have to worry about fixing it up and keeping it up and paying to do this or doing it yourself. And that became more of an albatross around my neck than having to worry about rental places for us. Just because it's not something we want to do. And I know that my drain got clogged and I couldn't wait a day for the guy to come up. I had to fix it myself. Like, I don't want to sit around. So I don't want to have the opportunity to do those things over and over and over and over. And it just scares me. And then if you lose it when you're 50, then you're screwed, which is even worse. So yeah, not buying a house.
You mean lose your house when you're 50? Or
like if something bad happens and then you're totally screwed, because then you're not used to doing anything else. So I've found that planning for change is better off for us than having a house or worrying about buying a house or any of that type of thing. Because we'd rather use the money we have now for we have retirement, like we have savings, or for traveling, which is what everyone seems to do when they retire, is they sell the house and then they go travel. Well, why didn't you just travel when you were young and then die? I don't know. Anyway.
You're not alone, and I think that there are so many people that are sort of doing this math now and saying, well, wait a minute, I'm gonna continue to, especially if you live through, I mean, what we lived through, we bought our house in 2003, and it was our second place that we had purchased. We were in the city first, and then we moved up to the suburbs. And one of the things that we learned watching the last bubble or whatever was, oh my gosh, you're not going to get, they told us when we bought, or conventional wisdom was, you're going to have X percent of
Yeah.
increase in the value of your place year over year, and at some point in the not too distant future, you're going to be sitting on a retirement package,
Yes.
sort of.
Yes.
You don't work like that. It
No.
does not work like that, and that's, I think, one of the biggest lies is that there's something to it. And my the best man at my wedding, he and his wife live in New York City. They're in Manhattan.
Yeah.
I don't know what their rent is. It's insane.
My buddy lives in Upper West Side, $3,200 a month for a 1 bedroom, 600 square feet, maybe.
It's probably right around that.
Yeah.
I know that they're this place is quite a deal, but they're also there because there's a pool on the roof, and it's one of the few places.
They have like a workout center, so it's a slightly nicer setup than my building at over twice the cost for less the space.
And one of the things I tell Seth, my friend, is at some point 10 years from now, you and I are going to sit down, we're going to have a beer, and we're going to figure out that you, by not buying, made the better decision than I did by buying. So what is it, if that's not the big albatross of things to save for, is it retirement and travel and just living your life?
Retirement, travel, medical emergencies. Insurance is always a worry. I don't understand why we haven't figured that out yet in our country, but hopefully we will. But that's a big thing. A lot of the money that we've spent we spend on buying fewer but nicer things. I've always noticed that when I worked for Esplanade Place in Phoenix, Arizona, which was the first luxury high-rise condo in Phoenix, right next to the Biltmore Hotel, where all the presidents and or next to Ritz-Carlton, so where all the famous people stay. I always noticed that they didn't buy very many things, but everything they did was really expensive. And I didn't, I'm not going to spend that much, but having fewer but higher quality things has enabled us to plan a lot better because we're not constantly replacing stuff, and we have a better idea of how long things last. So if you're gonna, essentially, we've realized that you're really renting everything in your life because you're gonna die with it. So you kind of figure out the cost of ownership over time, and that's something that we're big on, like shoes or jeans, or I only have 2 pairs of jeans, but they're both 7 for All Mankind, and I wear them for 3 years, and I get a new pair. That's worked out really well for us, and I enjoy not having to worry about buying so much stuff. It's different if you have kids, absolutely, but I think the concept can still be the same.
That's a very good point, and it's because we've found with our kids that there's kind of there's a bit of a pay it forward. When you think of the clothing stuff, there's the grandparents will always get stuff, right?
Yeah.
But beyond, the first one rolls around and everything has to be new. And with our second kid, who's now 10, it was first we had a girl, then we had a boy. So it's like, oh, we got to get all the boys stuff. Once you get past that hurdle of getting the new things, you realize that somebody will call you up and say, I've got stuff that my daughter has grown out of.
Mm-hmm.
And it might fit your daughter. Are you interested?
Yeah.
And then that cycle begins, and it's weird to watch the mentality of this happen, but it's almost as if a switch gets flipped, and then you're thinking about, well, who would then be the best beneficiary of the new stuff that my daughter had?
Yeah.
And so we cycled the girl stuff through cousins. And my wife has a friend at work with older daughters who still give us stuff that's like a little hipper or whatever. My son, we've got friends through school who they adopted a 5-year-old from China who's one of the most gorgeous children you've ever seen. But it turns out he's like a year and a half size-wise behind my
Yeah.
son. So all the cool stuff that my son had gets cycled
Nice.
through him.
Nice.
But yes, I mean, yeah, there's value in having those things that are well made and that work and that, you're
Well,
willing to.
a good comparison for that is laptops. Is between my immediate family and my extended family. My dad, my brother, my sister, one of her friends, my sister-in-law, and my sister-in-law's brother all own a laptop previously owned by me. Because I sell my 1 to 2 year old laptop for $700 to whatever family members in the rotation to need it. And then I'm able to buy, so as long as I buy, a mid-range 13-inch, as long as I don't buy a 15-inch or whatever else, we all kind of get a good deal. They get a good used laptop for a decent price. I get, a new laptop every 1 to 2 years. And that someone's worked out really well for us. So that's kind of very similar to sharing the kids' clothes. Is we share laptops. So my most expensive item that's not a car, I recycle it among my extended family, all of them. So it's kind of fun to do that.
Cool.
And so when I'm home and I see all the laptops lined up, it's kind of trips me out because they all used to be mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys Costco shoppers at all?
My mom is.
Your mom is.
Kay and I in here are not. There's only 2 of us. I can't eat that much stuff. But many of my friends are. It's just too far for us to go out, and most of the staples that we have, because I have celiac issues, I can't buy any of the good Costco stuff anyway.
Oh, okay. So that's what
that's a problem.
That's what got you into the cider.
Yep.
And okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I tested for celiac, and I couldn't figure out why. After I'd run a really long distance and have pizza, the next day my lungs were like hurt, like I couldn't move. And then I did all the tests and like, oh, well, this is why. And then I figured it out, and all of a sudden I could run for miles and miles. And yeah, that's why I switched to cider and all that kind of stuff. I like beer. I miss beer, but can't have it.
There are some. I've got does she have celiac? I've got a friend who's I think it's called Cicerone. It's like the beer sommelier.
Yep.
Yeah, she's got that. She had to get it for her last job where she was waiting. But she's also, maybe she's just gluten intolerant because she can try some of them, but she just can't have more than a sip. But she's kind of an expert on the hidden gluten-free beers, because some of the craft beers in there's some made in one of the Chicago suburbs, and these guys have a couple that they don't advertise that they're gluten-free because they're fearful.
Yeah, or they're not certified.
That I don't know. They are gluten-free beers, but
there are. They're usually made from sorghum.
These are whatever the point that these guys had. Two Brothers is the brewery, and the point that they had was, if they advertise it as gluten-free,
people think it sucks.
Because
most of it does.
And I tried some of those for the blog, and oh my god, there was one that was just. And my friend Jana, she's like, "Yeah, that's the worst, absolute worst beer on the planet." I've still got I keep a bottle of it downstairs in the basement to remind myself never to buy this stuff again. I don't know where I was going with all this. So the Costco, what are do you guys use any banking apps, any online tools?
Yeah, Simple, which is a Portland, Oregon-based online bank.
Okay.
That enables us to do really everything that you'd want an app to do with your finances. So at the beginning of every month, we can take whatever our estimated or pay is, and then shuffle it off into different categories. So I know that I have $400 it's safe to spend on groceries. I know I have $20 it's safe to spend on coffee and whatever else. So it's not actually pulling the money out of the account and putting it in different things. It's just showing me in my actual checking account what I can budget and what I've done. And then you can track month over month, because both of our checking accounts are connected to that app. We can track like our grocery expenditures and all that stuff, based on different things. And so Katie's had it for almost a year, and she can say, hey, we've actually done a really good job. We ate out less last month, and we end up having a little bit more money. And it's cool to be able to see that in as real time as we want, what works where. But without that, I'd be screwed, because all I know how to do is I pay all my bills right away, and then I have money left over for the rest of the time. Like, that's basically only money management that I know, which is fine, which gets you far, you can survive on that. But she's been a much better job, and having a financial planner, which I never thought I'd actually might have a financial planner, but apparently if you make money, you need one. Having that has helped long-term type stuff. But yeah, having that app has been huge, or having that app and bank has been huge. And then automatic withdrawals for all the stuff that you can't live without, so you don't ever spend anything dumb. Since I've been this is hilarious. Since I've been drinking less, dumb expenditures haven't been a big deal, which is great. So it's been easy to keep track of. No, it's cool.
Let me ask you one last thing about healthcare.
Yep.
I'm going to assume you're on your wife's plan.
Yes.
And have you found that, I guess this is what, year 2 of Obamacare or whatever? Yeah. Have you found that costs have gone up
yes.
a little bit?
A little bit.
A lot?
A little bit. Okay. Now, what we did is to offset this is we actually chose different levels of healthcare coverage for both of us. I'm actually on a higher coverage plan than my wife is because of cost. So I'm on silver and she's on bronze because I tend to get hurt a lot more. And in most years, we would have either both been on bronze or both been on silver, or we wouldn't have kind of worried about who's on what to whatever else. But paying attention to that and having a health plan that enables different levels of coverage for different risks has been extremely beneficial for us, because she just doesn't get sick as much. Or if she gets sick, it's just sick. It's just something that goes away. When I get sick or hurt, it tends to be some like involved surgery or whatever. So,
do you find that is it a high deductible plan?
Yes, it is. That's how we save the montime. So okay. we have to pay a lot into it, and then so I kind of hope I get hurt early in the year, and then then we're okay the rest of the time. It's terrible, but it happens.
Do you guys have an emergency fund?
Yes, just it's under $1,000, unfortunately, right now. But yeah, that's our first. When we met with a financial advisor, that was like, as soon as you get your monthly bills, you need to have an emergency fund. It needs to be 6 months worth of living. So we're saving up towards that, and we'll get there. I tend to get paid in chunks, so we make huge contributions to that every couple months. So
yeah, I hear you. And what's interesting is as I've studied these financial planners and the gurus over the years, they all have different sorts of theories about these emergency funds. I mean, the Dave Ramsey thing is, you're gonna have 3 months. Susie Orman might suggest you have more. Kiyosaki, the rich dad guy, mm-hmm. He's now saying no more than 2 months, and anything over that, you should be investing in the stock market, because his theory, which I don't agree with, is that the stock market is going to continue to grow at a 20% clip every year, which I think is horseshit.
No, it's just during the recovery time. It's not going to continue to grow like that. But okay.
Yeah, or at least he says that now. Be prepared to maybe shift your thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'll put this in perspective. We've been on my wife's plan because I sort of do, I think, similar stuff to you. I mean, I'm doing a contract thing with a accounting firm now as a PR guy. but my wife is the one who holds down the steady job, and we get her healthcare plan. Our out of pocket, and we've got a high deductible plan, and she switched jobs this year, and that might have had a little something to do with it, but still, our out of pocket medical expenses this year, this is with coverage, are right at about $9,500.
Jesus.
And it's nuts, because you think about whether or not the Obamacare thing is the way to go, and whether or not that's set up to benefit the most people or whatever. I mean, we're a middle class family of 5, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a crazy amount of money to be spending on out of pocket
No shit.
healthcare expense.
Yeah.
But one of the hidden things that they did is you used to be able to deduct from your taxes the excess of 7% of your take home that you spend on healthcare.
Okay. With
Obamacare, they ratcheted that number up to 10.
Okay.
So it's 10%, which, you start to, it's not a lot, but then again, if you have one of these big expenses, that could be a deduction that you just aren't going to see.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I'm not convinced is fixed, and I'm not convinced also that the Republicans have any answers for how they plan on fixing it.
I think it's better than some alternatives, but I don't think it's the answer to really anything. It's just not shitty, I think, is kind of, which, yeah. The more I find out about how our country actually runs, the more disgusted and sad I am. Like, why not just do the right thing for everyone? No! Why? Okay, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I plan on devoting at least a chapter of the book to, which is what happens if you say, screw it, I got to move to Panama or Uruguay or Ecuador.
It's too cold in Canada. I'd have to go South America.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's the number one thing that gets in the way of people moving to Canada, is the fact that it's cold.
It's real cold, yeah.
And I have no interest in being anywhere colder than where I am currently. So I guess, yeah, final thoughts, advice, questions, concerns?
The one thing
statements?
I'm super proud of, it's been helpful, is we did everything possible to get rid of credit card debt. Everything I picked one year, when my wife and I first got together, and we were paying rent on a cheaper studio apartment in downtown Phoenix, and all the big clients I got, everything that wasn't like living expenses went toward credit cards, and so I was able to pay off all mine, and some are hers, but at least one person's are done, so we can deal with that. Is having that, and that was a huge boon. So paying off something and then never using them again. I mean, I use my credit cards very sparingly now, but I haven't had a credit card of my own for almost 15 years because I was one of those kids that screwed it up. Well, I didn't really screw it up. I didn't buy anything big. I just bought a bunch of little shit like food and drinks, like normal. I just bought a lot of them. And that was huge because they won't call you. They won't make you feel like shit. You won't feel pressured to get all this type of stuff. Sure, the student loan people are mean about it, but you can usually figure out a way with them, even if you miss payments. But getting the credit card processes off your back and only having to worry about one bank account or one money account per month has been really big for us. Huge for us.
Did you go? So there's the snowball theory, or there's the high interest rate theory?
For mine, I went snowball. I paid off all the small ones that I could because at that point, the interest rate, I was just so distraught. I just wanted to get rid of them all at once. I believe if I had been a little bit more less distraught at how bad it was, like I had like 12 credit cards, and I was an idiot. They came to my college campus. What am I supposed to know? I don't know. Yeah. I would have done the high interest rate and just done it that way because that seems like a more logical way to do it. But yeah, I did the snowball and paid off a little bit, and just felt awesome about it. And when I wrote my last check for $3,400, it hurt so much, but it's the biggest check I've ever written, and I bought my freedom essentially from card companies. And
well, there was a story. It's interesting because there was a story about what works better, and even though logically it's pay the high interest rate, psychologically
snowball.
it's so much, because you get that little one out and you're like, wow, I can do this, and then it starts to grow.
That makes sense of why it worked so well for me, because I was paying off $17 here and then $77, and then like I said, 3,400 was the last one.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Thank you.
That's good advice. Well, listen, my goal is to have a first draft by March 1st.
Cool.
So I'm trying to do 1,000 words a day. We'll see how that goes. But if I can get there, I'll get there, and I'll keep you posted on what goes on, and I may reach back out to you with more questions down the road. But no, I appreciate it. It's good to one of the things I want to do in 2016 is make sure I'm doing more of this, where it's somebody that you're connected to and you've never chatted with, and why is that? Well, so I want to make more of these sorts of things happen in the new year. So
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And have a good rest of the year.
I shall.
And make it a good one. And we'll chat again soon. I appreciate your time.
Well, yeah, thanks, man. Have a good one.
All right. See ya.